Tell us where you're from. Uh, Enter your LinkedIn URL. It's optional. And if you have used AI at work, what have you used it for that really impressed your coworkers? I know I've heard some stories about people using it for things that I hadn't even thought of. And remember to save the chat in the lower window of the chat window. Click the ellipsis and then save chat. The ground rules today are to mute your audio when you're not speaking. We really don't want to hear your background noises. We've heard cats and phone calls and contractors. Join the chat if you can, because lots of good stuff happens in there. We often have side conversations happening there. And if you've got a question or a comment, just unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and join the conversation. If we have too many people joining it, trying to join it at once, we will, on the fly, figure out how to make it work. We are a virtual community team. We are members of HDI local chapters. Many of us belong to chapters that have gone defunct, but we are always looking for new members, whether you belong to a chapter or not. And you can contribute to us, to the community, by helping us brainstorm topics for future events, using your networking connections to find speakers or panelists, and to use your social networking skills to publicize and promote our events. We're always looking for people, and it doesn't have to be a full-time thing. It can be just one thing you do for us every month. And speaking of local chapter events, did you know that you can attend virtual events hosted by any HDI local chapter? We hold events every other month through the entire HDI local chapter body, but local chapters also hold virtual events or hybrid events, and you are welcome to attend any of those. And if you're traveling, and you happen to be in a city where there's another chapter and they're having an event, you are free to attend that too. And so we really recommend that you regularly check the calendar at HDIlocalchapters.org/events. And I know that there are several other AI events coming up in the future, in the near future, that you really won't want to miss, that you'll be able to attend from your desk, whether at home or work. So with this, I'm going to turn this over to Jason Wisher, who's going to give us an overview of AI.
All right, thank you for that, Lynn. And hello, welcome everyone. It's great to see everyone here in March. I have my ceremonial dyeing of the Chicago River behind me to celebrate St. Patty's Day, if in the central time zone here in the States. And
So
I think,
Jason,
oh, go ahead.
interrupt,
Yes,
sorry. Let's just end the poll to see what people have been using.
please. Yeah, I think ChatGPT is the big winner. That's not a big surprise. 46% of people have been using ChatGPT. Second on the list is none, which I think is a really good category there. A lot of people, 40% of the people, do not use generative AI. So that's a great audience to have during this conversation. And then Copilot is the big winner. I think Copilot is the one that's really maybe hit the ground running first. Google Gemini is not far behind. They are all around here. So thank you for participating in that. The second one, at home. At home, what AI tools have you used? Again, ChatGPT is the winner for personal use. 67% of people have used ChatGPT at home, and 19% use Copilot, 12% use Gemini. And we also have Microsoft Image Creator and other tools. I was excited to see some in the chat, some tools that I've never heard of, and I know that there's a lot of them out there. So I think that's one of the big takeaways that I'm going to really enjoy by saving the chat here and reviewing the different tools that people are sharing. So thank you for doing that and participating in today's poll. So with that, let me fire up my old school tools that I have here for work. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Who knows, maybe Gen AI will completely revolutionize the way that we share information and present information to each other in meetings by this time next year. You never know. But what we do know is that AI is everywhere. You can't go anywhere without feeling the buzz of AI. But how do we turn it from that buzzword into practical use cases that we can all benefit from and make our lives easier? So I want to start with, first of all, I believe that we've come a really long way in the last couple of years. Remember when we had to prove that we weren't a robot just by checking a box? Well, nowadays it's much more difficult than that. It's really hard to tell what is human and what is not human. And in fact, this used to be the litmus test. Can a robot make beautiful art? Well, as all of these different tools have taught us, yeah, they can make beautiful art. They can make funny art. They can make ironic art. Yeah, AI and robots, they can make art. So we can't use that anymore as a test. What's kind of fun for me is that I asked Microsoft Copilot to add a slide to this slide deck, and this is the slide that it created. So I did not create this slide. I did nothing to this slide except maybe use one of the design suggestions from PowerPoint. But you know that it's everywhere, and you know that it's here to help us. So we need to figure out and learn from each other in this community. How have we started using AI, and specifically generative AI, in our workplace? And what are some of the lessons learned, the early lessons learned, so that we can learn from each other? But what we do know so far is anything that is a repetitive task and a simple automation, that's certainly in target for how can we leverage that tool to help us do our jobs easier. And there's some other things as well. But what's really important is the ethical considerations and making sure that we give credit to IP authors and that we're not plagiarizing, like the good old 20, 30 years ago, we had to learn those lessons. Those lessons still maintain here. So you may have noticed quite a while ago, actually, that Zoom came first to the scene, and they introduced this AI companion. In fact, we're on a Zoom call right now, and they had this AI companion. And I'll admit, I have not really used this at all. So the adoption for me personally was just not there, and I'm actually kind of unclear on how to use AI companion or how is it beneficial, but I do know that they were first. Anyone in the chat here want to write and share how they've been able to leverage AI companion in Zoom if you've done so? But in the meantime, what I am personally working on is Microsoft Copilot. So I've been granted a license for my company to use Copilot, and I'll tell you, it's moving so fast. My head is kind of on a swivel. In fact, when I open up my Microsoft Word, it asks me, do I want to write my Word document into notes or an outline or whatever I want to do using Copilot? So that's kind of a game changer there. It's in your face. I think it helps with adoption. This is what you see when you click into Copilot within Teams. A lot of Teams users here, I think. So it'll show you kind of what's new. And I think the purpose of this is meant to prompt you on how do you start using this new tool. And I do think that the name, my personal opinion about the name, is genius, because it's not driving the bus. It's the co-pilot. It's not driving the plane, if you will, or flying the plane. It's the co-pilot. You are still in the driver's seat. So use this as a tool. But Microsoft is not the only player in town. Google has been innovating quietly behind the scenes, and they've introduced Gemini. So Gemini is their generative AI assistant, kind of like Copilot. And what's nice about that is that they're integrating this into their own ecosystem with Google Drive and Google Docs. In fact, they've even given me some wedding ideas. So I input my wedding planning spreadsheet. So, these tools are everywhere, and the companies that are succeeding, what we've seen so far is that they've had an opportunity to embed the products within their ecosystem, within their current platform. And in fact, it's there for email as well. So I'm a big Gmail user, and I think we've been doing this recommended responses thing for quite a while in Gmail. In fact, oftentimes when I'm responding to an email, I try to use one of those suggested recommendations, and then pretty soon you have an entire conversation back and forth with the recommended responses sometimes. So that's kind of crazy. But I wanted to point out just a couple things real quick, and then we're going to open up the conversation. I want to hear from people that are on this call who have been using these tools, especially in the workplace, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, or some of the others that we've talked about already. This is an example of what I did when I was working on this particular, these slides here, and opening up the Copilot tab in PowerPoint, because I have a license, I can create a presentation or I can add a slide. So I decided to add a slide. I said, add a slide about generative AI. I didn't tell it much, but I want to show you, this is the slide that it created. All I said was create a slide about generative AI. I think number one, it's beautiful. It's a lot better than the plain blue background of my previous slides that I was starting with. But the downside is Copilot appears to love to have bulleted lists. Maybe we've trained it that way, I don't know. But I feel like I need to rework some of these bulleted lists at times. And it's a good basic slide, but it is definitely beautiful. So what is generative AI? Well, it's related to machine learning in some way. It involves training models in some way. We don't really understand, the common person doesn't understand how or why. You may have heard of something called a large language model. I think that's really the way it works behind the scenes, is that an LLM is a type of model that's been trained on an incredibly huge, massive amount of data. And at least this is how ChatGPT worked, but to the best of my understanding, is that it predicts the words that will surround the words that you're using as an input. So it's actually not human-like, it's not AI, it's not even artificial intelligence in a way that it's alive or it's another intelligent thing, but rather it's a complex algorithm that is leveraging a data model that has a tremendous amount of input, and it can detect the patterns and provide the answers. So what I would also ask here is, everyone that's here in the chat, do you have anything to add to this conversation? Anything that you've heard about or seen that when you hear AI, this is where you go to in terms of vocabulary? I think that we learn from each other, we learn together. And really, again, the purpose of what we're going to be doing here is to really work with each other to identify, share stories of how have we actually used AI in our own workplaces. In addition to that, in terms of the vocabulary, I also want to share some of the pain points. Like, I noticed here that Copilot, at least when it's creating slides for me, it loves this robotic arm image. Now, I do think it's beautiful, but you got to have more variety in your slides. You can't just have the robotic arm and everything. So that's pretty good, And again, I mentioned that it uses the bulleted list, but I want to pause here and open up a conversation around some of the pain points that we've already experienced. It's early moments, right? Wendy, you and I were talking a while back about some of the challenges that you had in your organization, because you also have this Copilot license. You're testing, you're a pilot for the Copilot, right?
Right. Yeah. So our biggest discussion lately has just been around planning and all that's involved with getting prepared to roll out Copilot, right? So we definitely don't want to take the big bang approach and turn it on for everything and blow people's minds by having it available, as we say, everywhere. So we want to be very strategic about how we're going to roll this out. And so our company has put together an AI committee to make those decisions so that we can best roll that out. So lots of things to think about when rolling it out. Do we have the right licenses? One of the big things that came out of this too is that you have to use the new Outlook. Well, people are hating the new Outlook. So do we really want to use it for Outlook first? Because people just are not adapting to the new Outlook. So that could be a pain point, right? You just don't have that user acceptance for the new Outlook in order to use Copilot with Outlook. So I'm really interested to hear what others on the call here today think about Copilot with Outlook. I've seen some comments about Teams, but nothing about Outlook. You know, and then also too, we talk about it with SharePoint, and one of the pain points being what is the integrity of our data that's stored out in SharePoint. If we decide to use Copilot and tell it to look out at SharePoint for content, you know, do we have the permissions set right? Do we have good images out there? So we need to make sure that we're creating a good data governance policy. So yeah, lots of things to plan for Copilot, but those are a few of the pain points that we're already seeing before we've even rolled it out to the entire Copilot committee.
We're taking the pilot of the Copilot application, right?
Yeah, that's right.
In our organizations. Wendy, yeah, right after you told me about the struggles about the new Outlook, I did install it. I clicked that upgrade to new, and I couldn't even figure out how to create a meeting. I couldn't schedule a meeting using the new Outlook. So that's when I knew that it wasn't ready for me. I needed to go back to the classic version. But I feel like Microsoft will probably address those things in the upcoming version. But how about let's pause here and open up any other pain points that anyone on this call has experienced. If you'd like to share audibly, please unmute yourself, maybe turn your camera on if you can, and identify the pain point and what did you do about that?
Yeah, so in chat, Zeb says that Copilot has great features in some areas, but lacks terribly in others. It's like they're building the car while driving down the road. So Teams, Bing, Web, awesome. Word, Excel, not so much. So that's really interesting.
I saw someone else in chat also talk about using the meeting recap in Teams, and I use that regularly. What we've done after the meeting or close to the meeting is done, you know, it'll prompt you, do you want to recap the meeting? And it'll take notes. It'll summarize what was discussed, what the points and the takeaways are, and any action items. And I could just copy it. And unfortunately, right now I'm in a habit of manually pasting it into a OneNote so that I could access that later. But I hope that that could be automated in the future. But that's what I've been using so far.
I ran into a problem with the recap the other day because it wanted the full name and it said, "Do you mean the meeting for this?" And I was like, "Yes, that's the meeting." And it's like, "Sorry, I can't find that." I'm like, "Copilot, you suggested it." So there are some pains with it, but it will start to pull up emails and everything else. You just have to start to prompt it. So far, I agree. I think it was Zeb. I love the recap.
Yeah, and keep in mind, these are early days. You know, they moved incredibly quickly to get to the market near first. And I think it is probably one of the most substantial use cases. And maybe that's why they made such a large monetary investment in OpenAI quite a while ago. So yeah, Microsoft is definitely there. They're in your face. Google is competing and doing what Google does. And I think anyone actually have been using generative AI and the new Gemini tool? I have not used it as much, but do we have anyone on the call that has experience with that one?
I had a question.
Yeah, Ellen.
I don't understand, what does it recap in a Teams meeting? Does it actually recap what people are saying, or is it just the slides? Or
Yeah, I could tell you, number one, we're required to record the meeting. So we have to click record and turn on the transcripts. And it's very interesting. I mean, it removes a lot of the small talk, and it removes like mistakes, or if you're correcting something. If you say something, then you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, actually what I meant is this," it'll just pick out the accurate statements. That's pretty cool. But it definitely uses Gen AI to summarize the conversation. And I do have some examples to share. but I'd have to scrub them first. I don't have the a scrubbed version without, you know, proprietary information, but it does give you a really good summary. Is there anyone else on the call that that has been using the meeting recap using Copilot that can also describe what you've seen and how you've used it?
Yeah,
I-
hey, Zeb here. Yeah, I'm using it almost exclusively. In fact, one of the things so I went to a Microsoft seminar just a week ago. I'm fortunate to live about 20 minutes from Microsoft headquarters, so it was cool to get an invite to that. And I learned things just that, even though I've been piloting now for a couple months. So if you record your meetings, not just transcribe them, it gives you this recap option after the fact, which is really neat. But I was teasing my colleague who's a fellow manager because I wrote, what was the sentiment of this meeting? Because he hopped in about halfway through and said, this person was positive and energetic. This person was positive. And then he came on, this person was sarcastic and not very helpful. So you can use it for tone as well. And even though we were joking about that, I mean, imagine if you had to give feedback to one of your employees. You know, this is something. So, as a help desk manager for years now, I run a much smaller service desk. I would have loved something like this to have sentiment as a feedback tool. So that's just one. But another thing, you can use it mid-meeting, which is great. Let's say you come in 15 minutes late because we're all double booked. You can say, catch me up, and it will tell you what's been discussed to that point. It'll suggest follow-up questions you can ask. A tip that I would give anybody is use their predefined prompts. You can use your own, but if you use the predefined, at least right now while they're still building this thing, you get so much more out of it. So that's how I'm using it.
Wow. Those are great tips, and I didn't know about the sentiment, so I'm absolutely going to try that. And I hope that I'm not the sarcastic, unhelpful person, but we'll find out if I am. It'll tell me. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, this is Tanya. Zeb, I use it the same. Really cool. It doesn't always in the readout. It doesn't often do like he and her very well. So it'll call me a he sometimes, and it'll call some gentleman on the call hers. It doesn't seem to pick up that very well, and so you'll have to edit that. And then it doesn't do a lot of like if you use like a shorthand you're saying, and I don't know how it's supposed to learn that. I've tried to say like we have something called a GO, a general office, and it always writes it as GEO. And I keep trying to teach it like it's not GEO, it's GO, and it doesn't seem to pick it. So I have to go fix stuff like that. But it's minor when you figure it's taking all your notes and you can actually pay attention to the conversation versus having to sit and type away. It'll also prompt you for everybody or just the meeting organizer, but it'll ask you towards the end of the meeting if you want to start seeing a recap or follow-on questions to ask. And every once in a while there's some interesting questions in there that make sense to ask, you know, at the time before the meeting closes, or sometimes they're good like after meeting type questions for people to noodle about. So I've found those features really helpful. And then the other one, along with kind of how people are sounding in the meeting, is did people agree in the meeting? So if you have a lot and you're debating something, you can ask it to sort of say what the sort of how the group was feeling, and it'll say, well, the two thoughts were these two, you know, were the predominant thoughts. And so if you are brainstorming, you can kind of hone in on sort of key sentiments of the group, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, those are great points, Tanya. Thank you. I wonder what they do with the information. Like, there's got to be a clear barrier that this is your information, your proprietary information that you're discussing, right? Microsoft must have some kind of a
Yeah, that's something else that I
privacy.
learned, is that it's fully built out on your M365 security platform. So just for example, if you're going in Word and you're looking for a file and you're afraid you're going to find something that a colleague wrote, as long as they haven't shared that, you're safe. with the chat function, it should have that green shield that says your data is secure here. One of the things I like, because I work for a medical manufacturing company, so we have to be very careful using these AI tools. I like that I can actually write one of my employees' names into Copilot and not feel like I'm doing something wrong, because it is completely safe. But if somebody doesn't have the security in place already, I wouldn't go just start doing it. That's one thing that we do have a very secure environment, so I feel confident doing that.
Those are great points. I am interested in the prompting or the priming, I think that's the term that we use for the AI. We have a situation where it was taking notes and it was spelling Andy with a Y. And in this case, everyone in the meeting knows that Andy was spelled with an I. So I couldn't get it to change it. So I had to manually go back and just do a find replace whenever it's A-N-D-Y, change it to A-N-D-I in the notes. But I am curious if in the future, are they going to have that? And that's something that I would like to see as well. Any other pain points about using generative AI at work that we want to talk about here?
I think one other sort of gotcha if people are thinking about trying it is Copilot you have to be logged into Teams and into the meeting on your laptop if you're all sitting in a room together. It doesn't yet, and I think it's supposed to, and Zeb, maybe they talked about it. It's not able to pick up who's talking in the room and attribute it to Tanya or Jason or whomever. So then the transcription becomes a little harder when you get the notes. And I heard that's something that they were going to work on, or there's some sort of special microphones you can get for the room that they're like super expensive. That'll help do that. But I haven't tried it again. But the one time I did transcribe a meeting when we were all sitting around a table, it picked up the information, but it didn't attribute it to people. Just sort of frustrating.
I just posted something in the chat. So yeah, we did learn about that. And in fact, I haven't even looked into it yet because it's not turned on in our organization. But just like if you have a Google Assistant at home, you can train your voice kind of thing. You can do the same thing in Teams. And so in order that to work, that's what you have to do. Then there's all the conversation. Do I want to be training my voice in Teams? Or have it know my face? So I don't know. I mean, I'm at the point that we're going to be known by everything and everyone here within about 6 months with the rate that this is going. But yeah, that's where it is. If that's what you're looking to do.
Yeah, I'll have to see if that's enabled. I know we have lots of things turned off, but I'll have to see if that's enabled for us. To your point, I don't know if I want that or not, but I guess ALXEA knows my name now, so I guess it doesn't really matter anymore. So
typically what I do in a situation like that is I just take, I don't know, 5 minutes and just edit the meeting notes because I remember who said what, which is a little annoying, but still better. Another tip I would say is don't just blanket set meeting notes to a group without scouring them first, because it always gives you that disclaimer. This is generative AI. There may be errors. Don't send blatant errors because it doesn't look good.
That's right. It goes back to the fact that this is the co-pilot. You're the pilot.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
All right, thank you. And I really only have like one or two more slides here because this is meant to be an interactive conversation. After these, we're going to talk about use cases and features as a big group, and then we'll break out into small groups to talk about our own experiences for a short amount of time and then come back together and share those as well. So here are some tips, again, generated by AI. Pretty crazy, telling the machine how to protect yourself from the machine. But here's some tips about how to do your due diligence. And as you plan your implementation, keep in mind of the costs. I saw somebody say that with the Copilot licensing, they're available in a particular minimum quantity. I think one person said 30 licenses. So you have to just plan your costs and plan your time frame and then your desired outcomes from your pilot of using one of these tools. It seems to me like Gemini, Google's product, is free as far as I know. So you have to compete against free. although with any free products, you are the product. But pick out a strategy and define that strategy. Identify those use cases that are going to be important to your company and prioritize them. And somebody said it earlier today, this really comes down to a data management exercise. And of course, with anything automated, it's going to amplify what you already have. So if you're using it in a way where you're going to, use it in conjunction with your knowledge base, or you're going to feed it with documents that you already have, make sure that you analyze how good your stuff is and how updated it is. Do you have a data management department or an owner within your organization? What about skills and talent? Is this an opportunity to upskill existing employees? I'll tell you, about a year ago, I saw a lot of people getting certified. There's actually some free certifications out there on generative AI and machine learning even. So why not take your own your career and your own learning under control and get certified and start the conversation. Half the work is showing up, and we have 100 people here right now that are doing that. And then, of course, making sure that your security teams, your corporate responsibility teams, and anyone that's has a role in making sure that we're being responsible with this stuff is plugged in, and of course, monitor and work on data governance. Anything that anyone here would add to the conversation here about planning and how to do your due diligence as you're preparing to roll out a pilot?
So Jason, I just wanted to bring out a comment that was said by Stephen in chat earlier in the meeting about your bulleted AI generated lists, right? He says the human brain loves lists. Lots of research has agreed on that. Hence why you see them so often in clickbait articles. So I thought that was interesting, why AI uses bulleted lists.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. We also love correcting mistakes or errors. So I think it's it's giving us an opportunity to make adjustments or make corrections like that. And then maybe we get a little bit of a dopamine hit there. Okay, and I'll close with this in terms of the slides. I was asking how to prove the return on the investment for these Copilot licenses, and Copilot couldn't tell me that, but maybe we together as a community can help each other share some tips on how we helped prove that return on the investment, because it is an investment. It's an uptick in licensing. It costs money. So what are the man hours, I think, that we're spending on taking notes and recapping meetings and following up on action items? That's one way to do it. But any other ways to prove the return on the investment are certainly welcome for everyone here. Anyone else have any other use cases that you want to share with the big group here before we go into breakout rooms? Any other use cases that you've seen or tried, and what were the results? All right, well, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms for about 7 minutes or so. I think that's a good amount of time for these breakout rooms because the time flies so quickly. What I would like everyone to do is introduce yourself, meet somebody maybe that you don't know, and talk about within your small group, about 4 or 5 people per room, and talk about if you've used generative AI and what your experiences have been and any tips that you'd like to share. So we'll see everyone back in here in about 7 minutes. Thanks, everybody. All right, welcome back. I see people are starting to come back into the main room. I know that 7 minutes goes by incredibly fast. Hopefully people had some good conversation. And even better if you met somebody new, met someone that you don't know yet. I would encourage people to set a follow-up meeting with anyone that you met and just stay in touch as the months go by. It's a great way to grow your professional network. All right, welcome back, everyone. And I think now the rooms are all closed and we'll have everyone join back in here. Here we go. Now we have everyone coming back. So thanks again for doing that. I know 7 minutes goes by incredibly fast. If you ever want to pass time, just set a timer for 7 minutes and don't blink. It'll go by quickly. So with anyone that had some good conversation, maybe you met someone in your room that you don't know yet, I would encourage you to follow up and continue a conversation after in the upcoming days and weeks with that person. But what about something that you discussed in your room that we didn't discuss yet in the main room that you'd like to share? Does anyone have something you'd like to share with the team for everyone's benefit?
Well, if
Well,
it's
we were,
okay,
go ahead, Wendy.
if it's okay, I'd like to call out Todd Moore because Ellen, he said that he has used AI to write performance evaluations. And I know you had asked that question if anyone has done that. So Todd,
Yay, Todd.
are you willing to share how you've used AI to write performance evaluations?
So I take the information for just each individual person and ask the ChatGPT in this case to just write a summary of the information that I've provided, and then look at what it's written, and then like the format of it, the context, and then take those ideas and then write my own thoughts with them into the actual performance evaluation. So I use it mostly for like getting way to format or to organize the thoughts that I have, just an idea of that, and then take those ideas and make it my own. No plagiarizing.
Great
Wonderful.
suggestion.
So I also do things with evals or policies or anything else, but I am always generic. I will say person A has been late 4 times this review cycle, or I keep the information very light on those. And then I use Chat GPT or I use Claude AI, which is another AI tool. And then I move that into Copilot because Copilot writes a lot smoother.
I've also, just one more thing, I've also used it for my own evaluation purposes and those types of things. So I use it on myself too.
And I came in super late. I do apologize about this, but I know we're talking about AI. So a couple of things that I know that AI has helped me regularly. I have ADHD, so sometimes like trying to keep up with conversation within Zoom, sometimes it's in one ear out the other, and it's not me not wanting to pay attention. Sometimes I just can't. Zoom has now this AI feature where it actually summarizes the whole meeting, and I get an email and it breaks down as simple as possible what the meeting was about. And that's a lot easier for someone like me to digest. And I use that regularly. On a personal side, I have like a little, I write intros for like YouTube channels. And I'm not that good of a writer, but I'm able to put down at least my main ideas into Chat GPT, and it'll come up with something for me. And I'll tell Chat GPT to make it a little bit more basic. And at least I can tell Chat GPT what I'm wanting, and it'll create something to a degree that I would be able to use. but I still need to interject my own ideas into that right there so that it's still technically mine, but with the assistance of. As long as we're using AI as a tool as opposed to a replacement, all for it. If we're using AI as a crutch to rely on, that's where we have a real problem.
Yeah, that's excellent advice, and it illustrates the difference that we were talking about, using AI as a co-pilot, and you are the pilot. You're the one that is in charge. I like that. Emmanuel, I had a question about Zoom. Is it the AI companion that I see on the bottom of my Zoom bar, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's the AI
It is
companion.
that.
So whenever anyone, I guess the host switches that on, it'll take the whole meeting, whatever part is recorded, not the breakout rooms, of course, but whatever is recorded, or whatever the meeting itself, the main meeting room is about. It'll break everything down into a summary of, all right, this is what was talked about. Jason said something about something, and someone interjected this and that. It just made it really easy to really pay attention to a Zoom meeting. I rely on that on a regular, especially when we have like big, compartment meetings where I'm just like, all right, my boss is speaking. Oh, look, shiny something over here. And I just, ADHD just gets me going. That companion really helps me out a lot.
I think it'd help a lot of disabled people when you think about it, because even though, with deaf people, I think it would help blind people. It would help people with cognitive problems. It would be a wonderful tool for that.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have something to share from your small group discussions?
So Jason, this is
And
Jay. One thing that my group and I discussed was, I know the focus has been around Copilot, but we're currently looking at migrating away from our current ITSM platform. We're looking at other solutions as far as where are they with AI, generative AI. So we've been seeing some pretty cool use cases when it comes to developing in the platform. Think of more text to code. Also for the ITSM ticket workers, there's AI capabilities out there where it has potential to summarize descriptions. We get those email threads of emails upon emails upon emails where AI helps to summarize, okay, what is this user asking for? What's the problem? That also expands out to the concept of notes or journal notes. We've all been there. We've got a ticket with hundreds of journal notes. AI can go in there, summarize all that for you to say, hey, here's all the work that's happened up to this point, instead of spending time going through all of those. Same with resolution fields. What was done to resolve the issue? Or maybe even another thing I'm seeing is when it comes from a knowledge management perspective, it will literally review everything related to that ticket and create a knowledge article for you that can be reused by other technicians in the future should that same scenario happen again. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, along the lines of making our lives easier. I wonder if it could help us bridge functional requirements and technical requirements into one happy place so that everyone could get on the same page. That'll be fun. I should try some use cases around that. Thank you for that. Anyone else have something to share from the small group discussions? So brainstorming tools we've talked about. Jay, thank you for mentioning the text to code. I often have seen that as like an advertised use case for ChatGPT. This was like months and months ago, but I haven't actually seen anyone bring it all the way to fruition from, I don't have an app, I don't know how to code, to here it is, and I use ChatGPT to code it, right?
Trent, are you willing to share how you use AI for brainstorming? It looks like there's some people interested in that.
I was in the process of typing a response. Basically, all I do is when I ask, I use ChatGPT. When I ask it to give me some information, I always put a number in there. Give me 5 different scenarios for this or that, whether it be a policy or whatever it is I'm working on. Give me that information to get me thinking about those different ideas and how I can use it, and then I have a pretty creative mind, so I let my brain go to work, but I always try to, as I mentioned in my note, I feel like AI is, it comes across to me as AI, and in a customer service environment, we've got to put that human element back into it. So that's why I use it as brainstorming, because we need to work with our clients directly, but it gives me things to think about, to talk to them about. I don't know if that cleared up anything, but just put in a number. Give me 5 instances, give me 10 instances, give me 3 different instances, that kind of thing. That's how I use it, to give me different scenarios or ideas. And then, of course, be as specific as you can, of course, because the more specific you are, the better the results are going to be.
Yeah, so we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to be selfish and ask a question that I'm really interested in. How many support professionals are out there that are concerned about how much it's going to take to support these AI tools? What are your thoughts about support around AI?
I think in general, the support structure that's going to be needed to actually, one, it's going to be probably on the higher tier teams to implement safeguard data. And the data governance is a really big concern that I have, because it's all going to most likely be stored in the cloud. And so hopefully we can piggyback off of that. But also there's still, then you're open up to that vulnerabilities that are already existing. And we all are aware that in the news and all the times there's breaches consistently. So now we're going to be leaving it up to this system that's going to be trying to aggregate data to come up with ideas and solutions to things that, how granular are we going to be able to implement segregation between different departments, because you may have an HR department that's utilizing this to come up with offer letters, and then you have someone in accounting, and then you have someone in the front lines still utilizing the same tool. What's the bleed over going to look like? How is that going to come out? So that, and then who's going to be the traffic cop for that to make sure we're responding to it? So to me, that at least 5 to 6 FTEs are going to be able to dedicate to the utilization in a large infrastructure.
Thanks, Ross.
And just based on what we just said, I went into Copilot. I know that we've been focusing on Copilot here. I just want to share my screen real quick. I asked a question here. What are 5 recommendations to explore data governance concerns using AI? And it gave me some pretty generic responses, right? So this response wasn't actually that helpful. But if I'm starting at 0, it's a good starting place. And then I could dig deeper and ask clarifying questions, right? So just to show you an example, and here's that how to prove ROI for Copilot example I had before.
Now, are you paying for that program, or are you using like the free version? And do you guys see a difference?
Yeah, I have the free version on my phone, just the Copilot app that I downloaded from the App Store. And this is the paid version through Microsoft 365. And I just started playing with it for work, but I've been using it for fun and for my personal use on my phone, mostly with the generating images, so you could describe an image that you want it to generate, and then it'll generate a fun little image, which could be good for slides or Instagram or whatever you want to call it.
I'm in the comic book community, and there's a lot of people who are just completely against AI as image creators, as picture creators, because it takes all of the ideas that it finds on the internet and kind of puts it into this little idea and then puts it out there. So I internally that kind of hurts, but I also see the value in it.
That's right.
So one thing I want to quickly add for those that use Office 365, there was a big misconception where when originally Copilot was released, Microsoft was making you pay for 300 licenses just to be able to interact with the product. They did drop that requirement, so there is no more 300 license requirement. So for those organizations that want to start looking at it, playing with it, hey, now you have a better opportunity at a significantly, much more reduced cost than what it used to be. Not a salesperson for Microsoft, but what I've recently learned in the last few months. And another thing worth noting, what we've done from an AI perspective is if you're not already doing this, but essentially creating governance around AI. What do those guardrails look like? What are the limitations? Getting policies out there. Some organizations that I talked to last week when I was in Las Vegas for the ITIL, the Pink Elephant conferences, it's here, right? I mean, AI's here, and there's organizations that are still not to that level where they've started to have those discussions. So I think it's definitely important that we need to start having them now if we haven't already. That way we're not left behind the times.
All right, great discussion, and thank you again for joining this. Our community is stronger because of the people that are part of it. Really appreciate you being here today for this event, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a good month, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.